The courtroom in Washington, D.C. was packed, and every seat in the gallery was taken. Reporters from around the world sat with their notepads and cameras ready. Some had traveled from Europe and Asia to witness what many were calling the most important court case of the decade. The air felt heavy, thick with tension and expectation. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. At the center of the room stood PamBondi.com, but fierce. She wore a simple navy suit, her expression steady. She wasn't there for political points. She wasn't there for the cameras. She was there to reveal something dark, something that had been hidden inside America's courtrooms for years. Across from her sat Judge Edward Chen, known for his arrogance and sharp tongue. He looked down from his bench with a cold smile. Judge Chen had spent years building his power in silence, believing no one would ever dare challenge him. Today, that silence was about to break. The court clerk called for silence, and Judge Chen leaned forward. His voice echoed through the room. "Ms. Bondi, I hope you understand the seriousness of this courtroom," he said with mock kindness. "This is not a news studio. You cannot win public applause here." Pam didn't blink. She placed a thick binder on the table in front of her. Inside were hundreds of classified documents. Her legal team had spent months gathering them, documents that showed how justice was bought and sold behind closed doors. Judge Chen continued to speak, his tone growing more dismissive. "You are wasting the court's time with stories and theories, Ms. Bondi. This courtroom respects facts, not headlines." Some reporters chuckled, but the laughter faded quickly. Pam stood and took a slow breath. She opened the binder and pulled out the first document. Her voice was clear and calm. "Your Honor, what I hold in my hand is not a story. It is a contract signed by high-ranking judicial officials linked to offshore bank accounts used to hide millions of dollars." The courtroom fell silent. Even Judge Chen's smile tightened. Pam continued, "This is just the beginning. Attached to these documents are wire transfer receipts, anonymous shell companies, and private emails where judges, including those in this very building, agreed to rule in favor of corporations paying them under the table." The media gallery shifted in their seats, pens moving faster, cameras zoomed in. Chen slammed his gavel. "This is outrageous. You will not insult the integrity of this court." But Pam stood her ground. "I am not insulting this court. I am exposing how you and others have insulted justice by turning courtrooms into auction houses for the highest bidder." There was a low murmur in the room. A few people gasped. Others sat frozen, listening to every word. Pam placed another file on the table. "This evidence shows how tech companies used backdoor agreements to access surveillance programs. Programs that collected private information on millions of citizens without any legal process. Judges signed off on this without public knowledge in exchange for bribes disguised as consulting fees." Judge Chen's face grew red. "Ms. Bondi, you are out of order." Pam cut him off, her voice sharp. "I am in perfect order. Your Honor, and the people of this country have the right to know that even the courtroom they trusted was compromised." The court security guards shifted uneasily. The media took more notes. Everyone in the room knew they were witnessing something historic. Pam's final statement sent a chill through the air. "And if this court tries to silence me, the next file will go directly to the global press, because this isn't just about American corruption." These documents also show how foreign governments funneled money through U.S. court systems to manipulate cases and gain political leverage. The entire courtroom fell into deep silence. Even Judge Chen sat back in his chair, no longer smiling. The power had shifted in that moment. No matter how hard they tried, the truth was out and the world was watching. Outside the courthouse, crowds began gathering as word spread through live news updates. For years, people had suspected the system was broken. Today, they had proof. And Pam Bondi, standing tall inside that courtroom, had just declared a new battle for justice had begun. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters the next morning. Satellite news vans lined the streets, cameras pointed at every entrance. Journalists from around the world waited for updates, their eyes glued to the building where the walls of power were beginning to crack. Inside, the atmosphere was no calmer. The courtroom was filled once again, but this time people were restless, whispering and shifting in their seats. Something had changed. Pam Bondi walked in with quiet determination. Her steps were firm, her expression serious. Behind her, Marcus carried more files, and two young legal aides followed with boxes full of new evidence. The courtroom was no longer just a legal battleground. It had become a global symbol of the fight against hidden corruption. Judge Edward Chen sat on the bench, but his confidence from the previous day had disappeared. He avoided eye contact, pretending to read documents. Everyone noticed the change in his behavior. Even the other court officials seemed tense, whispering among themselves. The prosecutor's table, usually a symbol of state authority, now seemed weak. Government lawyers looked uncomfortable. Pam's evidence had created a storm too big to ignore. The media was calling it the biggest judicial corruption scandal in modern history. As proceedings began, Pam stood and addressed the court. Today, we will continue to present evidence showing how certain judges, including Judge Chen, violated the Constitution by taking bribes and protecting illegal surveillance programs. Judge Chen interrupted quickly, his voice shaking slightly. Ms. Bondi, you are dangerously close to contempt of court. Pam didn't react. She calmly placed another binder on the desk. This file contains communications between Judge Chen and high-level political operatives. These messages prove that court decisions were being sold to protect business interests and silence whistleblowers. The media gallery erupted in quiet gasps. Reporters furiously took notes. Cameras clicked rapidly. Pam continued. Additionally, this evidence shows how government prosecutors covered up these crimes, how corporate lobbyists controlled key legal rulings, and how innocent citizens were targeted under secret surveillance agreements. A lead prosecutor stood up, trying to interrupt, but Judge Chen silenced him with a raised hand. His face was pale. The weight of the situation was crashing down on him. In the middle of the courtroom, Pam revealed the final piece of evidence for the day, a video recording of a private meeting between Judge Chen, two corporate CEOs, and a senior political advisor. In the video, they discussed upcoming cases and payments disguised as donations to Chen's family foundation. Gasps filled the courtroom again. Even court security guards looked shocked. This is no longer a courtroom drama, Pam said, her voice steady. This is organized criminal behavior at the highest levels of law and government. Judge Chen shifted in his seat, visibly sweating. He tried to speak but stumbled over his words. The courtroom waited, silent and expectant. Suddenly, Marcus whispered something to Pam and handed her his phone. Live footage was coming in from the steps of the Capitol. Protesters had gathered, by the thousands, demanding arrests and immediate reform. People were holding signs that said, "Clean the courts. No one is above the law, and justice belongs to the people." Pam showed the footage to the court. "This isn't just my fight," she said. "This belongs to every citizen who trusted the justice system and was betrayed." At that moment, a court-martial entered the room and whispered in the clerk's ear. The clerk stood up, announcing that federal investigators had arrived in the building. Judge Chen froze. Panic flashed across his face. Minutes later, federal agents entered the courtroom. The entire room went silent, the world watching. Through live feeds, the lead agent spoke calmly but firmly. "Judge Edward Chen, you are under federal investigation. You are hereby removed from the bench pending criminal charges." Gasps turned to murmurs, then applause from the public seats. For the first time in years, justice seemed alive. Pam stood quietly, her mission far from over but her message now impossible to ignore. The system had tried to humiliate her, but the truth was louder. The court had tried to silence her, but the people had risen instead. And this was just the beginning. The morning after Judge Chen's removal, the news cycle was on fire. Every major television station played clips of the courtroom showdown. Headlines screamed about corruption, secret deals, and political cover-ups. International media joined in calling it one of the most important legal battles of the decade. Protesters filled the streets in dozens of cities. It was no longer just a court case. It had become a national movement. Inside her office, Pam Bondi sat at her desk surrounded by files. She had barely slept. Her team worked silently, going through thousands of pages of records. Marcus entered the room holding a fresh report. "Pam, it's bigger than we thought," he said. "We just confirmed that this wasn't limited to Judge Chen. There are at least 6 other federal judges tied to the same offshore accounts." Pam stood up, her jaw tightening. "Then we keep going," she said without hesitation. By noon, Pam was scheduled for a live interview with one of the largest global news channels. She walked through the long hallway of the media building, passing cameras, reporters, and security guards. Inside the studio, the famous anchor leaned forward and whispered, "Everyone's watching you. Pam, are you sure you want to go this far?" Pam's voice was calm but firm. "I didn't come this far to stop now." The cameras went live. The interview started with basic questions, but the anchor quickly moved to more serious matters. "Pam," he asked, "the public is shocked by these revelations. Are you accusing the entire judicial system of corruption?" Pam looked directly into the camera, "Not the whole system. But enough of it has been poisoned. We have proof of judges taking money, silencing whistleblowers, and protecting illegal surveillance operations. This goes beyond politics. This is about justice being sold to the highest bidder." The anchor tried to press harder. "What about the government? What about the politicians who appointed these judges?" Pam didn't blink. "That's the next part of this investigation. This evidence leads to senior politicians, senators, governors, and even White House advisors who use these judges like their personal weapons. I'm not going to stop until every name tied to this corruption is exposed." The broadcast was live in more than 30 countries. Within minutes, social media exploded. People shared clips of Pam's words. Hashtags like #JusticeForSale and #PamV's corruption became global trends. Calls for mass reform flooded social media platforms. But with the growing support came growing threats. That evening, while Pam was reviewing files in her apartment, Marcus rushed in. His face was pale. "Pam, we just intercepted a message. There's a political action group preparing to discredit you on national TV. They're calling you a fraud, accusing you of fabricating evidence." Pam sighed deeply but stayed calm. "They're scared." "That means we're close." She opened a secret file on her laptop. Inside it were sealed recordings, video and audio proof of private meetings between judges, politicians, and corporate leaders. This was the backup plan. Anyone tried to destroy her publicly, she would release everything. Marcus sat beside her. "They won't stop. They will come after your career, your name, maybe your safety." Pam stared at the screen. "Then let them come. Come. Because for every lie they tell about me, I will answer with truth." Later that night, a news network aired a segment trying to smear Pam's name. Paid experts called her a media opportunist and a political actor. But only minutes later, Pam's team released a short video online clear footage of a corporate lobbyist admitting to paying judges for favorable rulings. The effect was instant. The smear campaign failed. Even neutral journalists turned on, the system demanding a full investigation. By midnight, the Justice Department announced they were opening a special task force to investigate judicial corruption nationwide. Pam Bondi sat quietly in her apartment, watching the news. The battle was far from over, but the momentum had changed. The corrupt had money, power, and connections. But she had the truth, and the truth was finally louder than their lies. Next morning, Washington, D.C. woke up to something it had not seen in years: federal agents walking into courthouses with sealed warrants. Cameras captured images of men in suits carrying boxes of documents out of government offices. For the first time, it was not the powerless being arrested. 'Twas people with high positions, people who thought they could never be touched. Pam Bondi sat in a quiet conference room, surrounded by her team. She didn't smile. She knew this was not a celebration, which was just the start of a very dangerous road. Marcus placed a new file in front of her. His face was tense. "Pam, this is going international," he said. "Okay. Last night, we confirmed there are foreign accounts tied to 2 U.S. senators and a cabinet secretary. The money comes from overseas, some of it from enemy states." Pam leaned forward. "Then it's not just corruption. It's national security." Marcus nodded. "Yes, and we also traced payments to political campaigns, media companies, and even intelligence officials." Pam's stomach turned, but her voice stayed calm. "Prepare everything. We go public tomorrow. Across the city, the president's advisors were in emergency meetings. Phone calls were made to top news networks trying to stop the story. Old political friends called in favors." A senior advisor whispered, "Pam Bondi must be discredited before this becomes global." That evening, Pam received a strange call from a blocked number. A calm voice spoke. "Ms. Bondi, you need to stop. You're opening doors that have stayed closed for a reason." Pam answered firmly, "Then maybe it's time those doors were broken." The voice continued, "You have a family, Pam. This can get personal." Pam replied coldly, "I know exactly who you are. I have recordings of this call. Threatening me only proves I'm right." The line went dead. Pam looked at Marcus. "Get our whistleblower protection team ready." Going to get ugly? The next morning, Pam sat in a live interview with one of the world's largest investigative journalists. The cameras rolled, and the anchor asked, "Ms. Bondi, overnight, several political leaders have called you a danger to democracy. They claim you're creating chaos." Pam spoke with full clarity. "What they call chaos is actually truth. We've found proof that US courtrooms were sold to the highest foreign bidder. This is about our sovereignty being sold in secret deals." She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive, placing it on the desk in front of the cameras. "This contains video, audio, and financial records. These show how some judges, senators, and corporate leaders work together to manipulate court rulings in exchange for foreign money." The journalist's eyes widened. "Are you saying this goes beyond just domestic corruption?" Pam nodded. "Yes, this is international blackmail. This is political warfare inside our own institutions." Within minutes of the interview, news agencies around the world shared the clip. Protests turned bigger. World leaders started asking questions. Foreign embassies denied involvement, but leaked documents proved otherwise. Later that day, Marcus rushed into Pam's office. "We just got word from the Justice Department. Several high-profile arrests will be made tonight." Pam stayed, silent for a moment, then said, "They are trying to protect themselves. They will arrest a few to calm the public, but they will try to protect the biggest names." Marcus asked, "What do we do?" Pam's voice was quiet but firm. "We release everything tonight." As darkness fell on the city, Pam uploaded the entire evidence package to multiple international news outlets, activist groups, and even foreign press agencies. There was no turning back. Across the country, millions watched as secret files were revealed, recordings, court memos, and financial links between powerful judges, politicians, foreign agents, and business giants. At midnight, arrests began. But more importantly, the public realized the system had been broken for far too long. Pam Bondi stood by the window of her office, watching the Capitol building in the distance. Her phone buzzed with threats, warnings, and desperate calls from people trying to stop her. She ignored them all. For the first time in her career, she wasn't afraid of anyone in power. Because the world had finally seen the truth. And the truth was now louder than all the lies. The next morning, the streets of Washington were louder than ever. Protesters filled the sidewalks in front of the Capitol. People carried signs demanding a full investigation. Reporters from around the world gathered outside the Justice Department. News helicopters circled the city, showing images of the unrest live on television. Inside the courthouse, Pam Bondi arrived with her team. Her face was calm, but she knew the danger was growing. Marcus walked beside her, holding a folder with fresh reports. "Pam," he whispered, "there's a secret meeting happening today. Senior government officials, including the vice president, are trying to stop the investigation." Pam nodded. "Let them try. We have one last card to play." That afternoon, Pam stood before the federal court again. But this time, she wasn't just presenting evidence against judges. She was exposing an entire network. She addressed the court in a clear, firm voice. "Your Honor, this case has revealed something much larger. This is not just about one corrupt judge or a few political donations. This is about foreign governments using secret money to control our justice system." There was silence in the courtroom. The judge presiding over the case was not Edward Chen anymore. He had been arrested. A new, temporary judge listened carefully, knowing the world was watching. Pam continued, "We have traced funds to political campaigns, major news channels, law enforcement departments, and private security contractors. These funds came from foreign intelligence services disguised as business deals." In the media gallery, reporters typed furiously. Cameras captured every word. Pam placed a large folder on the desk. Inside this folder are bank records, secret agreements, and private video recordings. This evidence shows how the justice system was used to cover up crimes, silence journalists, and protect illegal surveillance operations. The government lawyers stood up and tried to object, but the judge allowed Pam to continue. Suddenly, Pam pulled out a small device and connected it to the courtroom monitor. A video began to play. It showed a private dinner between 2 U.S. senators, a foreign ambassador, and a tech billionaire. The group laughed and discussed how to delay a court case in exchange for campaign money. Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge's expression changed from neutral to shocked. Pam ended her presentation with one final statement. "This court deserves to know the truth. The American people deserve to know the truth. And starting today, there must be arrests, trials, and full accountability." Later that day, Pam returned. To her office, Marcus rushed in with breaking news. "Pam, it worked. A special counsel has just been appointed to take over the investigation. They've already issued arrest warrants for 2 senators and 3 former White House officials." Pam allowed herself a small smile for the first time in days. But Marcus quickly added, "It's not over. There's pushback. Powerful people are trying to spin the media, saying this is a political witch hunt. Some networks are calling you a traitor." Pam turned to the window, watching the crowds outside. "Let them scream," she said, "'cause now the people know the truth. They've seen the evidence. Lies won't protect them anymore." That night, Pam did another live interview. Millions of viewers tuned in. The anchor asked her, "Pam, are you afraid of retaliation?" Pam answered, "I am not afraid. I'm tired of watching this country get sold in back rooms. I'm tired of politicians playing games with justice. I'm tired of courts being controlled by hidden money. This is about more than politics. This is about saving the future of this country." The anchor's final question was simple. "What's next?" Pam's answer was clear. "Next, we clean out every level of corruption. Next, we restore justice. And next, we remind these people who really owns this country. The people. The world was watching, and the storm was far from over. By the next morning, Washington was on lockdown. Police surrounded government buildings. Federal agents guarded courthouses, and protests grew louder in every major city. The television screens showed nonstop updates, arrests of powerful people. Secret deals exposed and shocking footage released to the world. Pam Bondi sat in a quiet meeting room with her legal team. Marcus entered, his phone in hand. Pam, the international reaction has started. European leaders are asking questions about their connections to these American officials. There are rumors that some foreign banks are freezing the accounts tied to this corruption. Pam stayed focused. That's good, but we still have one final mountain to climb. Marcus opened a file and placed it in front of Pam. This is it, he said quietly. The highest name on the list, a former vice president. His private connections to foreign governments and judges are clear in these records. Pam looked at the documents. Her heart felt heavy. Taking down local corruption was one thing, but accusing someone at the top of government power was dangerous. Still, she knew there was no turning back. The truth had to be told. That evening, Pam scheduled a press conference. Cameras from every major news channel lined up outside the building. The world waited to hear what Pam would reveal next. As she stood behind the microphone, she began calmly. The people of this country have been lied to for too long. I have been called a liar, a traitor, and a fraud. But I have stayed silent while the facts did the talking. She held up a thick binder. This is the final chapter. Here are documents showing how the former vice president used his power to influence judges, to block investigations, and to direct foreign money into American courts. A loud gasp moved through the crowd of reporters. Pam continued, "These are not just my words. These are banking records, secret emails, and even video evidence. This is proof of a hidden system where justice was sold to foreign agents." A reporter quickly asked Pam, "Do you understand the danger of accusing someone with this much power?" Pam looked straight into the cameras. "I understand. I also understand that silence is more dangerous." Every time people stayed quiet, this system grew more corrupt. The broadcast went viral. Millions of people watched the live conference. The next morning, the Justice Department announced that a full investigation into the former vice president would begin. Court orders were signed to seize accounts, review phone records, and block anyone from destroying evidence. Inside Pam's office, the phones rang nonstop. Some people called to threaten her. Some tried to offer her deals to stop. But thousands of people also called to thank her, to support her, and to say they were finally seeing the truth. Marcus walked into her office holding a letter. "Pam, this just came in from the White House. They're asking you to attend a private meeting with the president." Pam's eyebrows raised. "What do they want?" "They say they want to discuss the next steps of national reform and hear your ideas on rebuilding the justice system." Marcus replied. Pam stayed silent for a moment, then said, "Tell them I'll be there. But I'm not going to ask for favors. I'm going to demand changes." Marcus nodded. "They know you can't be bought. It's why they have no choice but to listen." That night, Pam stood by the window of her office, watching the street below. She saw people holding signs calling for justice. She saw young people marching for a future without corruption. She saw a country waking up. For the first time in years, Pam felt hopeful. The fight was not over, but the system had been shaken, and now the people were awake. Tomorrow, she would walk into the White House, not as a guest, but as a voice for the truth. The next morning, the sun rose over Washington, D.C., but the city felt different. Streets that were once filled with fear and silence now echoed with the sound of people demanding justice. Pam Bondi stood quietly in front of the White House. Gates dressed simply, holding no briefcase, no bodyguards, just determination in her heart. "Ah!" Marcus walked beside her, speaking softly. "Are you ready, Pam?" Inside that building are the most powerful people in the country. Pam nodded. I'm not walking in there for myself. I am walking in for every person who has been silenced, for every whistleblower who lost their job, for every citizen who believed justice was not for sale. They walked through the tall iron gates. Secret Service officers, open doors, staff greeted her politely, but Pam could feel the nervous energy in the air. Everyone knew the world was watching. Inside the Situation Room, the president waited with top advisors. A group of men and women who, just weeks before, had tried to bury the truth. Now they had no choice but to listen. Pam sat across from them. The president spoke first. Ms. Bondi, the country has reached a breaking point. Our institutions are in crisis. People don't trust the courts, the media, or the government. What do you expect from us? Pam looked directly at the president. I expect action. Not speeches, not empty promises, real, permanent action. She placed a list on the table. First, you must agree to a special independent task force that investigates corruption at all levels, no matter how powerful the person is. Second, we must pass new laws making secret political money illegal. Third, we must rebuild the justice system by appointing judges with no ties to political donors. One advisor interrupted. These changes will create chaos in Washington. Many of your own allies will be exposed. Pam replied sharply, then let it happen. True justice means no one is protected because of power. The president stayed, silent, looking at the papers. Finally, he said, and if we refuse? Pam answered simply, then I will take this movement to the people. I will lead them in every street, in every courtroom until this country is fixed. The world has seen the truth. You can't hide it anymore. A long silence followed. Finally, the president nodded. You have made your point clear. I will announce these reforms on live television. The people deserve to know the government works for them again. Pam stood up, knowing this was only the first step. As she walked out of the room, staffers avoided her eyes. Some felt shame, some felt anger, but all knew the old way of power was ending. That night, the president addressed the nation. His words echoed across television screens. Today, we commit to fixing what was broken. Thanks to brave citizens like Pam Bondi, justice will no longer be for sale. In every corner of the country, people cheered. Whistleblowers smiled with hope. Journalists who had been silenced prepared to return to work. Courts opened investigations that had been locked for years. Pam Bondi watched the speech from her small office. No grand celebration, no victory parade, just quiet satisfaction that the fight had been worth it. Marcus asked, "What now, Pam?" She smiled faintly. "Now we keep watching. We make sure they do what they promised. When they forget, we remind them again." Outside, the chants of the people grew louder, not of anger, but of hope. And for the first time in a long time, the country believed justice was possible again.